Now, I mentioned that I saw Dweck in court, and I didn't see him testifying. I just saw him sitting in court because he wasn't there to testify. He was there because he got arrested in Maryland, all right, for stealing a car, and in effect stealing a car by renting it and
someone else. He committed fraud, wire fraud.
Right. Well,
while he was working for the government.
Right, right. So he did end up in jail while, not only while he's working for the government, but the government controls his moves.
That's right.
Like he can't go to Maryland without them. I think it was Maryland, maybe it was Delaware, but
right.
One of those two places, without them, without their permission.
That's right.
Okay. And one thing that I never saw reported any place, but I could see this unfolding in the courtroom, is apparently he stole somebody's identity to put this on the credit
with
card.
Their permission, he says. So he said.
Well, the person that it came back to had never heard of him, you know. But I mean, how much are they controlling this guy? Is it lack of control, or were they controlling him to do something he shouldn't have been doing?
Well, I think it's a combination. It's a combination of lack of control on the FBI's part. As a matter of fact, in 2003, the Office of the Inspector General, Glenn Fine, did a audit of select confidential informant files throughout the country, over 200 files, and they found that in 87% of the cases, the guidelines that we were just talking about, you know, instructing the informant, making sure he's, you know, the files are safe, were violated, enough so to compromise the cases. So there's been a practice in the FBI of not conforming to guidelines and violating due process. But the oversight, and that's why there is oversight, that's why whatever they're doing is the checks and balances, as the U.S. Attorney's Office says. So the U.S. Attorney's motivation for not, you know, constraining the FBI, to me, is obvious, especially when the people who were in these key positions to do the monitoring all wound up with jobs in Christie's office, and with some people who were contributing to Christie while the investigation and while this prosecution is going on. So they clearly had a stake in his election.
Well, let's get back to this U.S. Attorney, the nature of the job. We were talking before about, as far as politicians go, when you get to trial, there's a presumption of guilt.
Yeah.
If they bring you in, they don't think you're innocent. Okay.
You don't have to make it to trial.
Right. And it's really stacked in the favor of the U.S. Attorney. They'll deny it, but it really is. Not only the presumption of guilt, and of course they get to choose who they're going to prosecute, but also whatever they think you did, whatever they think they're going to try to prove you did, they're going to charge you with 6 different things. Okay. Now you can be acquitted on 5 of those 6. And then the jury can give you the benefit of the doubt and give you a guilty one. Oh, this one's no big deal. We'll give them a guilty on this. And the prosecution goes, we won.
Yeah.
We showed you. Justice was done. Okay? So, I mean, when I mention that to people, they don't believe me. All right? And before I ever sat in a courtroom and watched what goes on there, I wouldn't have believed it myself. I mean, this is something.
Well, you've had it in the convictions you've had in Bidwick 3. You've had just what you said. You've had defendants who were convicted of fewer charges that they were exonerated of. In other words, they were exonerated of more charges, and they were convicted of the other offenses. And in some instances, the requirements for the crime were the same of those charges that they were exonerated of, which is why you had so many of these guys going back in on appeals.
How can you convict Baldini of something that you don't even charge Healy with? I don't.
Well, it's a good point. I mean, to me, that trial basically came down to, you know, if they didn't indict Jerry Healy, how do you convict Leona Baldini? That should have been the whole thrust of the case.
All right, why didn't you just put your head down and defend yourself?
You defend myself.
You're attacking. Okay.
Yeah.
What I mean, Harvey Smith went in and defended himself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He didn't attack the Justice Department.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they don't hate Harvey Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you're putting a big target on your back.
Yeah, I am. But my background, you got to realize something. My training as a registered environmental health specialist and health, but I got to work codes, books, and ordinances, being the health chief of Jersey City. Every law enforcement, that's part and parcel of law enforcement. And you learn that every branch of law enforcement, there's a code book and there's guidelines and there are rules and regulations. And it was my background in nature that said to me, I want to see what they are in this instance and what was going on. And to me, I looked for a motive of why someone would try to, say I did a crime when I know I didn't commit one. Mm-hmm. What would motivate somebody to do that? That bothered me. Saying, Do
you have the answer?
Yeah, it was. They were making contributions to Christie, and they had promises of jobs, which he had promised early on in February to them. And their guidelines say they should recuse themselves when they're handling a case where they have a conflict of interest, and they didn't.
Something occurred to me just recently that's more troubling than it sounds. When they targeted you and others for this purpose, it was nothing personal, okay? It's like, I just want to win an election.
That's right.
And what sort of attitude is that? That you can be a person who does not mind the fact that you're destroying somebody's life.
Well,
because it's as if you're not a person to them. You mean nothing to them.
You have to be a very twisted individual to solicit satisfaction from the fact that you could do this to another individual. But if you read the Jersey Sting and the attitude that the authors of the book perceived from the prosecutors of what they thought of Hudson County people, you understand that the scum of the earth, that the only non-corrupt politician in Hudson County would be a dead one. Mm-hmm. So that was their attitude. They had they came to the perception that anybody we come across who's in politics in Hudson County is corrupt.
Okay.
That's what the authors.
You know something? Let's give me a minute on that. All right. Mm-hmm. In your life, in politics, what's the percentage of corrupt to non-corrupt politicians that you've had dealings with? I mean,
that have been actually convicted.
No, I'm saying in your relationships with people, what's the percentage of these that you would regard as being corrupt?
Below 1%. Below 1%. I think when people do, it's like anything else. The ones who are guilty of public corruption, it's magnified, it's publicized, and people get painted with that brush if they're in that profession, and so goes it. But by and large, I've mostly found people to be honest.
All right, let's stop there and see if we can't do one more. Okay. Mm-hmm.